Tyler, have you ever done an escape room before?
Yeah, in fact, I'm actually in one right now.
Wait, the room that you're in is an escape room?
Yeah,
Like you've paid money to be in there to try to find clues, to escape and see how quickly you can get out?
yeah, but I mean, it was like I know that there are clues and everything all around here, but it's just so nice. I've got everything that I need. Why would I want to leave?
Uh, I don't, because it's an escape room. You're supposed to escape.
I mean, I guess if you want to be boring like that, but how could I just leave this space? I mean, I have fun looking for all the clues. I know exactly how to get out of here, but
Right.
I just don't want to.
Yeah, see, I think this is the problem with a lot of escape rooms. They're too comfortable. They're not encouraging you to escape.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like, honestly, though, I feel like you've been in there for a while. You probably need to get some sun, some fresh air, maybe interact with other human beings, not just online.
Mm, I don't know. I mean, I've got a window.
Okay, I guess good enough.
Yeah.
Hello, and welcome to Ignore the Bell. My name is Nathan.
And I'm Tyler.
And this week we are talking about Escape Room, a 2019 suspense film. Is that what we'll call it?
Sure.
It was sort of
Survival
marketed.
horror or
Yeah,
yeah.
it was marketed as a horror film, but it's really not.
Hmm.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's fair to say that it's not a horror film.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If it were a video game, then I think it would be classified as survival horror. Um,
Yeah,
and so that's why I'm like, I think that that might be the best term for it, even though we don't really have that genre in movies.
right. But that's more or less what it is. I have got lots of thoughts with this movie, and I remember when it was first marketed, and I was interested, but it might seem like a strange one to just do a single review on. But I've got lots of things to say on this. There's a reason why I want to talk about this. So,
Okay. Yeah,
yeah.
no, you encouraged me to watch it. I watched it. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm willing and looking forward to talking about it. Uh,
Great.
but
Um,
before we get into the full discussion, I understand that we do have a sponsor for today's episode.
we do. So our sponsor is the new streaming service by the Minos Corporation. For only a tiny amount, a meager $10 million dollars a year, you get access to the most complex games of murder, mystery, and mayhem that you can possibly imagine. Watch strangers die in elaborate, complex ways on screen. You know, it only happens approximately once a year, and it is a $10 million dollars subscription fee. And aside from that, it's really just playing highlights of the previous year's events. But I think it's a good deal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's a steal, honestly. I mean,
Yeah,
how can you not enjoy watching other people try to get out of these escape rooms?
right. Apparently, at least according to this movie I watched, there's just this human compulsion to see this happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's natural. It's natural, folks. So yeah, get your subscription to the new streaming service by the Minos Corporation. All
Hmm.
right. I hope you enjoy.
Oh man, I wish this discussion could go on forever.
Ignore the bell. We're gonna keep going, people.
All right, so we were talking about the 2019 film Escape Room. I want to get some of the details on here before we get into discussion. It is going to be a review, so we do a shorter time limit with a review, so we've set the timer for 30 minutes. So this is directed by Adam Robitel, um, and the screenplay is by Bragai Shoot, and Marla Melnick, and the story is by Bragai Shoot. And there's a reason why I'm bringing this up, aside from the fact that I think you need to give credit to the actual filmmakers.
Hmm.
But okay, I guess I'll say it pretty much right off the bat, in part because of where my particular writing career is at and because of stuff that I've been thinking through, because I'm redirecting my writing towards screenwriting for the next while, because I've got some short stories and a debut novel, and I've got some other books that are ready to go, but I'm thinking that I'm going to be focusing more on screenplays for the next while. And in part because of that, I watched this movie and I was already interested in watching it. And I could not help but think for almost every moment of this film, this is a perfect film from a screenwriting perspective.
Yeah.
Like, I really think that it is. And that might sound strange because I don't think that it's a perfect film. And I'm not saying that it's the most brilliant movie ever made.
Right.
But if you think about this, because I've been listening to some podcasts in terms of screenwriting advice, from listening to interviews with literary managers, and what sells in Hollywood would be, either in terms of original screenplays, what you're most likely to sell is fairly low budget, high concept thrillers slash horror movies, right?
Yeah.
Where the concept itself basically markets the film for you because you're not even going to have much of a marketing angle. And so it has to tap into something that is in the cultural consciousness, but we haven't really seen this on film before, but it's got familiar themes and tropes. And I'm going, this is perfect. This is the movie I wish I wrote, because the thing just, it's like, it makes so much sense that this would sell and that this would be popular. Because escape rooms are a fairly recent phenomenon and they've become increasingly popular. And the premise is all right there. It's all right in the title. It's an escape room, essentially, but an escape room gone wrong. What if you're in an escape room and like there was something sinister going on? And so many people enjoy escape rooms and there's interest. And even if you haven't gone to one, you're curious. So you want to watch an escape room portrayed on screen. And like I say, the marketing is basically done for you. And then even once you get into the film, and that's what I want to do, is I kind of want to go through it and look at how effective it is in terms of where all of like the structure to it, introducing characters, the beats within each scene, like all of this stuff, the beats throughout the film, that it's basically perfectly constructed with having some poor dialogue along the way and some weird execution and some odd moments here and there. But even with the ending, and this is going to be full of spoilers, so if you have not seen Escape Room, go and watch it. That's basically your warning. But even with the ending, it's not a great ending, I don't think, but it's a great ending from a screenwriting perspective because they're going to make a sequel.
Right. Yes.
They've already announced it that the sequel's happening.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, December of this year, I believe. So
nice.
It's just the way they open it up to a bigger story universe, whether you feel like it's earned or not, it still makes perfect sense from a screenwriting perspective, because to sell that to studios, to producers, to be able to say, here's the concept, everything is accessible within the film, anybody can watch this and follow along, it's not too frightening, it's PG-13, so you're going to get it out to lots of audiences. Like, their budget was $9 million and it made something like 155 million at the box office.
Oh man.
So that's why I'm saying that I look at this and I'm like, yeah, as far as a film to study, to think about, if you are an aspiring screenwriter or even a fairly established screenwriter who's, just like, what's working, how do you really get a film produced, not just selling the option, but getting it to go into production. This is basically it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's perfect in terms of you don't have too many sets or anything like that. That you have a very a very small cast compared to most films.
You don't have to worry about extras.
Yeah. So it's an easy sell.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it all on a sound stage. You don't have to worry about location shooting. Like, there's very little location shooting in the film. I think there's a couple moments here and there, but for the most part, you can do this all on a sound stage, where you can just film at any point in the day. You're not worried about daylight, or because it's all indoors.
Yep.
I'm just, the more I think about it, the more I go, this is exactly what Hollywood wants. Whether you like it or not, I'm saying, like, it just from, I admire it from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, because even, costumes, really, really cheap that way. It all
Yeah,
takes place during, 2 days.
yeah. And this is the type of movie that I absolutely love, even if it's poorly done. And I guess, like, because I've got certain genres where I'm a sucker for them, and I understand, like, as much criticism as I put forth in terms of the superhero genre, because I don't like superhero fiction in general. It's not my thing, and so I don't ever begrudge anybody for enjoying those movies.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? They're not my thing, but there's a lot of people who will see anything involving superheroes. Doesn't matter if it's Marvel, DC, or original characters or anything like that. All the TV shows and they just
Yeah.
watch everything, right? And I'm kind of like this when it comes to fairly low budget horror movies that have got some kind of weird, sinister, um, powerful group that's orchestrating social experiments on unwitting victims. Like,
Right.
that is my thing. I
Yeah.
love that idea. I mean,
Yeah. I agree entirely. I am the same way. I mean, it doesn't need to be horror, but
right.
just, yeah, any type of, yeah, and we had kind of talked about this before, where like one of the things that this film really reminded me of is The Cabin in the Woods,
Yeah.
which, is also playing off of the tropes of, of horror and all of that, but it's, all orchestrated by this organization. So yeah.
Yeah, this secret but incredibly powerful organization that's putting unwitting people into this social experiment, and
Mhm.
for various reasons, but ultimately for kind of their own amusement. There's, I think, the most, I guess, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this more, if you want to see the best film, not just like an entertaining movie, but the best film of this is the independent movie called Cube. I
Okay.
forget when it came out. Have you seen Cube before?
No.
Okay, Cube is a really good example of it. It's basically escape room, but it doesn't have and this doesn't really give anything away. We never know anything about the organization.
Mm.
You don't see the invitations. It's immediately inside this cube, right? And they're going kind of from room to room, and they're not all making it. The people who are in there, why are we in here? How did we get in here? All of these questions are swirling the entire time. So I'm saying that it's not high concept enough in the sense of it's an escape room and you get an invitation and we see people before they get in. We understand exactly why they go. And we're like, yeah, I know what an escape room is. And then it's
Right.
like, oh, and then there's this organization which leads to the sequel. Like, Cube doesn't do any of that stuff because
Mm.
it's much more independent in spirit, and it's much
Gotcha.
darker in a lot of ways and more psychologically upsetting than this one, which is much more light and easy and a commercial film to just go and enjoy, and you don't have to think too much with it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But Cube, I think, is maybe the best example. It's basically a more mature, sophisticated um, approach to escape room, like as
Mm.
far as the
Gotcha.
premise, and darker too. So there's that. I mean, there's the film, I think it's called The Circle, which I don't know if you've ever watched that. That's a British indie film.
I haven't watched it, but I know that Netflix was recommending it when I was, trying to look up
You would like
escape room.
it.
So
Yeah, no, you would
okay,
like it. It's worth your time. The
cool.
Circle's a good example of this. Of course, there's Saw.
Yes.
Certainly the first Saw film, and
Hmm.
then from there, like I know that you've watched the rest of them. I've only watched Saw 2 and then part of Saw 3, but Saw is doing the same type of thing, except Jigsaw's got more of his intention, where it's not just for his own amusement. He has got this belief that he's genuinely helping people.
Yeah. Yeah, and also on the note of Saw, then it's escape room is more similar, I would say, to Saw 2 and later, just because
Yeah,
they go through different scenarios. It's not just the one.
right.
So
Yeah, I
yeah,
think
that there are
that's
different puzzles.
That's a fair way of putting it. And then even something like even the Hunger Games, right? It's
Hmm.
just we're gonna watch these people, like they're just gonna like lose along the way. It's all for our entertainment. It's these incredibly powerful people who are never at risk, but they're taking vulnerable people and then putting them in this contrived situation for their own amusement, and just and you get that line from the game master that basically humans have always enjoyed this type of thing of seeing people fight for their lives for
Right.
entertainment, but now we live in such a safe, cushy world, and that this doesn't happen. I'm like, what are you talking about? We live in a safe, cushy world. Like, in some ways, yes, right? But I'm like,
Yeah.
if you really want to, like it's true that we've got the most sophisticated civilization ever, and that we've got in the Western world access to modern healthcare and accommodations, and it's climate controlled, and the best safety features on vehicles, and our food supply is safe, and you know pharmaceuticals and all this stuff to be able to fight against infections, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, at the same time, I mean, just watch the news if you want violence. Violence is
Right.
happening every single day. It's not gory, but there's uh, outside of the Western world. I like, because our brother-in-law who's from El Salvador, that apparently, because our sister has gone there, she said on the news they show everything.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and not only that, but because like one of the main images that that he invoked was that of gladiators,
Yeah,
which yeah, we don't put people into a ring to fight tigers or lions really, unless they are already like highly skilled in that, in which case then it's more of a an act than anything. But we do still have like boxing and
and mixed martial arts
yeah,
with in a variety of ways, and obviously the success of the UFC becoming incredibly popular, and occasionally in mixed martial arts or any kind of combat sports, then occasionally the people do die.
right,
It
yeah,
does happen, and certainly overseas, I mean, with soldiers, that with war zones all over, drone footage and stuff like that. I'm saying, if you're really interested in that, you can watch it. You don't need to contrive the situation the way this organization does in this film universe. Like,
yeah, and yeah, the final note here is that um, this stuff is being orchestrated all the time, but just in a fictional way because we are interested in this, but we just
yeah,
go to see movies and
right.
TV in order to fulfill that, instinct or whatever it is. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
because like
Um,
all these rich people are spending money in order to put on this entertainment for us, but it's all not real. It's just, yeah, this is the scary thing. You're gonna watch people get torn to shreds or, blown up or whatever. And it's like, oh yeah, here, take my money. Like I definitely want to go see that. And it's
right.
like, oh, well, that's kind of weird that we do that. And then it's like, well, we've always, watched sports like that. So that's why it's like, huh.
Yeah, I mean, there is that, and there's also the element of we put ourselves into contrived simulations of danger in the
Right.
Western world, but that doesn't happen in the developing world for various reasons.
Mm,
But I mean, obviously, there's the very obvious reason why, people in impoverished nations around the world are not going on roller coasters. They're not going to theme parks or amusement parks and going on roller coasters
yeah.
or other thrill rides. And it's like, because it costs a lot of money to build and
Correct.
to actually pay the price of admission. So
Yeah.
you're like, for that reason. But also, even if they had access, um, I don't think that they would enjoy it the way we do in the Western world, because if you have enough dread and fear and terror in your own life, do you know what I mean? Like, if
Yeah.
you're in, let's say if you're in Syria right now and you've been there throughout the conflict, do you really want to say, like, hey, let's go do something that's going to get your heart rate up?
Right.
Right? But if you work in a
Yeah.
cubicle 40 plus hours a week, then there is a certain amount of like, hey, let's go to an escape room and get a little bit of a thrill. Let's go on a roller coaster. Let's go to a haunted house, like,
Yeah,
like,
or bungee jumping, skydiving, even, whitewater rafting.
yeah,
There's all sorts of activities that we have where it's like there isn't really a point to it other than just, ooh, it's
make you
kind of
feel alive.
thrilling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
make you feel alive, get your heart rate up. Ooh, that was thrilling, but it actually wasn't really dangerous. It just felt
Yeah.
dangerous, right? And
Yeah.
I'm saying that people who genuinely live in dangerous circumstances, but there's no reason to pursue those things. So
Yeah.
it's the premise of an escape room itself is in many ways a sign of privilege,
Right. Yeah.
right? That for let's orchestrate this entire situation in which you're trying to find clues to be able to escape, and you're just doing it for entertainment purposes, not oh, let's really put our heads together and figure out how we can scrape together enough money to have a meal tonight. Right?
Right.
That
Yeah.
if you don't have to worry, if all of that stuff is provided for you and you're already living in a pretty cushy world, then it's like, let's pretend that we're stuck in a place and that, we're going to have to live by our wits. And it's like,
Right.
because you don't really.
Yeah.
So there's this interesting commentary going, like, I think a subtext that you can read into Escape Room, but the film really isn't interested in exploring any of these questions.
Right. Yeah. 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 It is just kind of a justification for the villains of, yeah.
Yeah, I guess we might as well, since we're on the topic, we might as well talk about it. So, like, with the ending and with this villainous group of all these powerful people, I mean, I don't know how we want to describe it, but this Illuminati type group, they're not necessarily trying to, manipulate the world economy through this, or maybe they are doing that too, but this is
Right.
just their form of entertainment. It's you know, there's a lot of movies that we've had, especially in the last 10 years, that are focused on this premise. I mean, even something like Get Out, Jordan Peele's
Mm.
Get
Yeah.
Out,
Yeah.
of, these rich white people who are exploiting other people, right? Presumably they're rich white people
Right.
who are orchestrating this entire thing for their own entertainment. And I think that because there's more and more concerns of the growing wealth inequality in the world and the
Mm.
increase in billionaires, and what exactly, like, why do you even need all that money, and the stuff that they start spending their money on becomes questionable for a lot of people who are struggling to make it with the economic collapse in 2008 and the world economy struggling and all of this stuff. That there's just a resentment towards wealthy people, and
Mhm.
like increasingly so by a large group of people, um, popularized by a whole bunch of different, like, political figures and stuff that happens on Twitter and all of that. That there's a growing resentment against, the one percenters or the two percenters,
Yeah.
right? And so to make them the villains, in a lot of ways, seems like the safest thing that you can do in a film,
Mhm.
right? Because like
Yeah.
every other group, like, because I'm saying historically, like, within Hollywood, if you just make the foreigners the villains, and then it's like,
Right.
no, that's problematic. That it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, we can't make foreigners villains anymore. You don't want it. Like, the only foreigners who are still safe villains would be Nazis, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
that's generally safe. You can't even really, because for a while there it was like, well, you could take Middle Eastern people and make them terrorists, but
Mhm.
now we're just seeing more white terrorists.
Right.
I don't know if
Yeah.
you've noticed that.
Yeah. And also I know that people with any sort of physical disfigurement has also been a popular one, which
Right.
has continuously been criticized and is now even uh, in Great Britain,
Hmm.
um, or the UK, sorry, um, then they um, then they actually said that like they're not going to be providing funding for any film where the villain is disfigured. I don't know. I'm like I
Effing
take issue with
cowards.
Yeah, I'm like, I take issue with that. I see what you're saying, but
Well, that's the problem though when you're relying on the government for a
right.
lot of your production budget. And
Yeah.
I guess like because I'm fairly involved in the horror community, and I mean I really enjoy horror and I write horror. And horror is one of those things where it's so transgressive at its heart.
Mhm.
And there's so much like I mean horror is just says, oh, what's the line? We're gonna cross that. Right.
Right.
That
Yeah.
and the horror community generally is okay with that, but it's not like that there's a consistent group which gets vilified. It's
Right.
everyone gets vilified in horror. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
the ethnicity, whether you're abled or you've got some kind of physical or mental disability. It's like, you know, aliens or whatever. Like everybody gets at one point vilified in horror.
Yeah.
And so it's like I'm just saying I hate like for mainstream audiences though, then horror is able to kind of do stuff that other genres can't because most mainstream audiences don't go and see horror movies.
Right.
They
Yeah.
see very, very few, and the ones that they do are pretty tame.
Yeah.
And so it's like horror is kind of allowed to do its own thing because it's offensive to most people anyway. So then you can
Right.
be extra offensive within certain horror films because it's like, who cares? They're not watching these things anyway. It's just us
Right.
weirdos here who are watching this.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this group that you have, the Minos group,
Mhm.
uh, what did you think of the ending? Because, like, I guess the only thing I wanted to say with it really, and I want to get your thoughts on it, but I couldn't help it. And I've noticed that I have become so guilty of doing this, and it's really bad. But since I've started watching so much stuff on the computer, whether it's on Netflix or a DVD that I'm watching on my computer, I use the mouse all the time to see how much time I have left,
Right.
and that's not a good thing to do. Like that's not
Yeah.
the experience that you have in the cinema. And if I were watching this in the movie theater and then you've got, let me get the names right, I think it's Zoe and Ben, the
Mhm.
two characters who are still alive by the end of the film, I'm
Mhm.
looking at this and I'm going, they've got like 6 minutes left to
Yeah.
resolve this, and I'm
Yeah.
going, why are you introducing this big villainous group and saying it's not over, we have to go after them? And I'm just looking at this going, you don't have any time to deal with this whatsoever. Why are you even introducing this idea? That's
Yeah.
my issue with the ending.
Yeah, yeah, no, I did the exact same thing where I, used the mouse, I checked to see how much time was left, and I was like, oh, only like 7 minutes. This is weird.
Yeah.
And then yeah, they like yeah, Zoe like gets the police to come and it's all this, like, oh, it was never here, and it's like,
Uh-huh.
oh, it was here. And then yeah, we get the fade to black, which
Yeah.
could have been the end.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But because it's, in the studio system and it's like, ooh, this is going to be really, really popular, we need to have some kind of, real um, uh,
Se-
tease.
Sequel potential,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Or series potential.
Right.
And I mean, that's essentially it in the industry. It's a great standalone film with series potential.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because it could have ended with, her just coming back and realizing that there's no way out. And then it's just, she's left with the knowledge that, this all up and that there's nothing that she could do about it. And that would have been fine because then it's open-ended enough that they could
Yes.
have done a sequel, but it didn't feel like, okay, we are going to do a sequel.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
There is an alternate ending on the DVD because I got the
Oh,
movie
okay.
from the library, so I did watch the alternate ending. I don't know if you want to know what it is.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So basically, she's like going through her notes or something like that, and then she starts thinking about like the significance of like 359, and then she realizes that was the classroom that she was in where we
Hmm.
first meet her, where she's in the university lecture hall, right? The what would it be called? Not an auditorium, but a
Uh, uh,
stadium style seating in the
yeah.
auditorium. I don't know. What, amphitheater? That's not the right word, but
No.
anyway,
Yeah, yeah. But
but
I know what you're
amphitheater
talking about.
style seating.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she's in the lecture hall, and so she goes in there, and then she goes to her seat, and then she finds her check for $10,000, and then
Mhm.
she starts to see these cameras pop up, and then she's like, no, no, no. And then like all like the walls, like to like the doors, like there's these walls that start rising up. And so then she realizes that she's in the next iteration of the escape room of the game. And so it's not really all that different from what we have with the ending that we get in the theatrical release, which is we don't see her on the plane where they've
Mhm.
orchestrated it, where the plane itself becomes a type of escape room,
Right.
but that they're just testing it out to make sure that it's going to work.
Yeah.
Uh, but it leaves it off with essentially the same thing. It's essentially, I forget exactly what the term would be, but a difference without any significance.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, um because like I'm thinking back to, other horror films which typically have, the monster or whatever have that last, reach up and grab,
That's
whether you're
right.
talking about,
Monster's dead. Oh no, it's not.
yeah, yeah, whether you're talking about, Friday the 13th with the hand coming out of the lake,
Right.
or, Nightmare on Elm Street with the hand coming out of the window.
Yep.
It's the same thing. It's just the hand, and it just,
Yep.
pulls them back in, quite literally. And so with this, then like, I'm fine with a film doing that, but, it being the classroom, then I'm like, that I'm so confused there. Like, that's just,
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense.
But the plane to me makes even less sense. The classroom makes zero sense, but the
Mhm.
plane makes negative sense. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? It's like
Yeah.
it's so much. It doesn't make any sense. Number one, why do they have this whole simulator for
Mhm.
like they've constructed this entire plane simulator and
Yep.
this huge thing? And I'm like, you needed the simulator to know whether it would work as an escape room?
Yeah, I know, because it's weird because that basically shows us how they were able to, get everything out of that building so quickly. Because I mean, like we knew that it was at least partially, screens and whatnot, but
Right.
to just have it be like, yeah, yeah, we've got this whole simulation thing, all the floors and everything are just built into the building, or not even built in, but they're just placed inside the building, and so then we can just remove them once we're done. So
Okay, maybe I'm misunderstanding then. Keep going. Keep going.
yeah, because I like that aspect of thinking that the because yeah, the plane, it could be, but I don't know if if this is what they were doing or not, but it could be that she wouldn't have actually been on a plane, but that she would just be
Okay.
boarding on a simulation,
Sure.
like going into that simulator thing,
So
um,
how would they do that though? They're gonna get her
at
to
the
an
airport.
airport and they're gonna have this thing, this entire simulator with a gate, and there's gonna be like 100 plus people on this plane with her, but it's actually just a simulator
I
at the
mean,
airport?
they've already got the 100 or so people who are in the simulator that they're testing out.
But aren't those
So,
people like on their side who are gonna presumably be safe?
right, yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's why, like, I don't know if that's what I don't really think that that's what they were doing with that. I do think that it was,
That she's
oh,
gonna
they're
get
just testing it.
actually get on a plane?
Yeah,
Yeah, but it's going to be a plane that they've rigged in various ways.
yeah,
And they're going to poison the pilots and do all of these different
yeah.
things. But even that, then I'm like, for a shadowy organization that tries to keep a low profile,
Mhm.
stealing a plane and then having the thing crash because it seems like that's their. How is that even going to work as an escape room? Because don't they want to know who's going to last longest?
Yeah, you would think.
That's what I'm
But
saying.
apparently, then this is just can you escape or not? I guess because people are already interested in Zoe as a character.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
Because
which yeah,
it's supposed to be what the premise is that nobody ever escapes. They just want to see who lasts the longest.
there has to be the possibility of escape. That is what they
Okay.
say. Um, but yeah, because it didn't seem like they were going to go after Zoe until she decided to go after them.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was like their way of, of making sure that she stayed quiet.
Right.
But why not also film it just
Right.
because?
Yeah. I think my thing is that I absolutely love the premise, but then it's just even the ending, I don't have a problem with seeing a little bit more of this organization. I think
Mhm.
it's the plane thing that's really just throwing me off.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
classroom thing I don't think is good. Like I say, I think that makes zero sense. Like how are you going to do that on campus? You've rigged
Yeah,
that entire lecture hall
I
on a
know, yeah.
university campus. Like how the hell does that work? What about the professor like for his 8 a.m. class the next morning who's just like, why is there a steel door? Like do you know what I mean? Like that doesn't make any sense to me. But then I'm like, the plane makes even less sense.
Yeah.
And but their whole premise of we do this, I guess every year. Does he not say it like every year? Like
Um, yeah, I think he says something like that, but he also says that they do it like all over the world.
right. But this like we had they always want more
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
complex puzzles and subjects, more interesting subjects that we had savants, we've had like college athletes, and so all
Yeah.
of these things, and then the whole we're gonna like the lone survivor. Like this is so brilliant, I love all of this.
Yeah.
This is great, 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 and then you get to the end, they're like, why'd you make the organization seem so stupid at the end?
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that it's really interesting the way that they do it though, because it basically feels like they wrote it so that it's like, well, we could have Zoe come back in the sequel, but we don't have to. We could start with a brand new cast.
Totally. That is 100% how they did it. It very much reminds me of Final Destination movies.
Mm.
I don't know if you've watched Final Destination movies.
No, not really.
That is one of like I've said it before to one of my friends in grad school. Like he was getting his PhD, I was getting my master's, and like we both love horror. And then we were talking about guilty pleasures, and I said my guilty pleasures is the Final Destination movies. They could
Yeah.
make 100 of those. I would watch every single one.
Yeah.
I
I'm
literally
sure
would.
that I will love them once I do watch them. It's just that I haven't gotten to them yet.
Right. And his response to me was, that's not a guilty pleasure at all. They're just genuinely great. And so I was like, okay, that's fine then. It made me feel a little
Cool.
bit better. But even if it is a guilty pleasure, that's fine. But like I say, I don't like. I literally would watch 100 if they made 100 of them because I
Yeah.
just love the premise so much. But Final Destination movies essentially do the same thing,
Yeah.
where you could pick up the next film where with the some of the characters. I'm trying to be careful here without spoiling too much, but if you've got, let's say, one or two characters alive at the end of one of the films, and then it's like, but it's not over yet, then you can start the next film with that, or you could just have an opening sequence where you see what ultimately happens to them, and then you get into your new cast of characters, or you
Yeah.
could just have a little bit of backstory, like a newspaper article about somebody dying in some way, like Zoe, like blah blah. Oh, that plane crash was awful. Like that's how
Yeah.
you could just embed it into the sequel without even having to have her in there. So
Yeah.
this is where I'm saying that I don't think that it's a perfect film, but from a screenwriting perspective and from a Hollywood perspective, I think it's a perfect film. It is exactly what they want. They want it
Yeah.
to have sequel potential, series potential, that we can have some of the characters return for the second one if we want, but we don't necessarily have to go that way. And even as stupid as the ending is, it's like, but it's what Hollywood wants. It's
Yeah.
they want the ability to be able to make a sequel and have the option, depending on how audiences react, of
Yeah.
do we want the same actors, the same characters to come back or not.
Yeah.
It's just like you did it, you nailed it. I just don't like what they do with the organization itself.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I agree. I think that one of the things that like I don't know, really throws me off is why in the world is this person disguising themselves on the screen to talk to other people in the organization?
Right. With yeah, the Wizard of Zordon.
Right.
Mixing things a little bit here, but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, like, I don't understand why, yeah, you get this shadowy figure on the screen either who's in charge of it. It kind of points to this organization, like, because it allows them from a story perspective to be able to then go off and explore this whole thing of what this organization is, and this entire thing could take off in an interesting direction. Like, it could be a really interesting franchise beyond escape rooms,
Right.
that it could get into what that organization is and other social experiments that they've done, and has it always been escape rooms, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Yeah.
Like, they could go in all kinds of different directions, but that whole, like, why is he still shadowy when that's his organization? He's supposed to be like the CEO or something.
Yeah. 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 I guess because like part of me is thinking back to Saw and spoilers for the first Saw movie, which you think that the one person is Jigsaw,
Right.
but then it turns out to be somebody else who was actually laying in the room the whole time,
Right.
pretending to be dead, and that is you know really really interesting to get that, like, oh yeah, we shot the guy who we think is Jigsaw, and then
Yeah.
it's like, oh no, you get this tease of nope, that wasn't him.
Yeah.
And so then in this movie, then you very much could have had the same thing where the games master
Hmm.
is, like that he's more vague with the way that he's describing it,
Right.
that he's sort of implying that he is in charge of the whole thing.
Hmm.
And then there at the end, then we get, a tease of like, oh no, there was somebody else, somebody who just like steps out of the shadows, right?
That would have made sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That would have been far more effective.
Yeah.
Um, this is, yeah. Like I say, I I am not saying that this is a perfect film, because it's got a lot of problems. Like, it's and
Mhm.
it's not the most brilliant thing ever written. It's just separating it out into, like, depending on your perspective,
Yeah.
then yeah, but because, yeah, that would have been an effective way of doing it. And Saw is another movie that's exactly what I admire and respect. And it just gems like that I just love so much. An original premise that's high concept and satisfying and rewarding. It delivers. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's um, yeah. This is it's just it's in the spirit of all these other films
Yeah.
that do such it's a familiar trope, but with a slightly different premise that's high concept.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um, and
I
it is PG-13, which will help it tremendously.
100%. Yeah, and that's what I was telling you before, because I was kind of encouraging you to watch it with our older sister, who does not like horror movies, but I said, like, she'll like it,
Yeah.
because I don't know, now that you've watched it, do you agree with me?
Yeah, yeah, no, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was saying, like, it's not like you really don't get deaths on screen.
Yeah, I know. It's really interesting. You turn one room into a giant oven, and yet you don't see anybody actually burn alive.
Nobody burns alive. Though we have Nick. Let's just go through it. Nick, he is the expert at escape rooms,
I
and
thought his name was Danny, wasn't it?
uh, maybe I'm getting it mixed up. Maybe that's the actor's name. Let me go back to it. You're right. It is Danny. I wrote down the wrong name. It's Danny.
Yeah.
Nick Dodani is the actual actor's name, but
Gotcha.
Danny
Yeah.
is the character name.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So we've got Danny, who and I guess we might as well just kind of briefly go through this. Uh, he's, to me, a perfectly written character, because he's such a great entry point into the series.
Yes. Yeah.
And so you need to have an expert, but we're not experts at escape rooms, right? Like, the
Hmm.
regular movie going audience. So then you have all these other characters in the film who they don't really know. They're unfamiliar. They kind of understand what an escape room is. Maybe they've done one or two, but they're certainly by no means any, like, experts on this. But he's done like 90 something of them. Is that what he says?
Yeah.
Right. And so he's our expert at escape rooms. And then, of course, he's so naive, even though he really would be, you know, really the second most useful person, because Zoe, who's just got this brilliant mind for solving puzzles, is ultimately the best at solving these escape rooms, but he would be the second most helpful person because he understands how they're typically orchestrated.
Yeah.
But he is, because he's done so many, he doesn't recognize real danger when it's staring him in the face.
Right.
So
Yeah.
anyway, and of course he gets killed off first, right? Because you
Yeah.
want to have like your most useful character get killed off first, so it's like now they're in big trouble,
Yeah.
right? But the way he gets killed off is like he, falls through the ice, and then it's obscured because you're looking through the ice and you don't really see much, and you don't see him struggling. You don't see his face get all like puffed up, or like there's no zoom in on the eyes.
Right.
There's none of that. It's a fairly distant, uh, a distant perspective on his death,
Yeah.
right? So we have that.
Yeah.
You've got I'm trying to think who the next one is who dies. I think it's Amanda, who's the veteran.
Right.
Where she, is hanging from the telephone in the upside down room in the bar, and then she drops, but we never even see her hit anything.
Yeah, we just hear a thud.
Yeah, we just hear a thud. So it's like that was the first one's kind of on screen, but we don't really see it. The next one is completely off screen.
Yeah.
Who do we have?
Mike.
Okay. And how does Mike die?
It is, I think his name is Jason, who uses the, what's it called? The paddles, right?
Mm-hmm.
The medical paddles. In
Oh,
order
right,
to get
right,
his
right.
heart rate up.
Yeah. Yes.
And just outright kills him.
Yeah. It's it's been a little bit since I saw the movie. And yeah. So right. Yeah, he does that. Like, oh, we got to get the right, heart rate or something.
Yeah.
That's gonna open up.
Test your limits. You got to get it all the way up then. And it's like,
That was such a weird escape room that they were in. That whole getting there are some of them where I'm like, I didn't like that. That wasn't
right.
great. And like, yeah, and I feel like as they go on, they become more ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
More like, that's not a fair competition. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because the final room, which was also the first room,
Yes.
because we got to see it in the tease at the beginning, then that one is completely unfair. He got the puzzle, but he had to sit in the fireplace. Was there anything that told him that that's what he had to do? I don't really think so. There were no real clues to that. So.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Mike, he gets zapped to death with the what is the proper term for it? Defibrillators? Is that it?
Yeah, I think so.
The defibrillator machine or something?
Yeah.
I think that's what it's called. Anyway, so he essentially has a heart attack because you're right, Jason just goes after him, and then Jason ends up getting killed by Ben, more or less.
Yeah.
And then Ben doesn't die, and neither does Zoe. So it's like, well, we saw a guy who had a heart attack and somebody who bumped his head, somebody who fell, but we didn't see her hit, and then a kid who drowned, but we kind of watched it through the ice, and there was nothing zooming in on them, nothing gory, nothing grisly about it. That's why I'm saying that, like, this, even though it was marketed more as a horror film, horror audiences are expecting the camera to linger more, and they're expecting to be disturbed and uncomfortable by the visuals, but this was very much PG-13. And it is PG-13, but it very much feels PG-13.
Yes, absolutely. And that does work in terms of, widening your audience, but it also works in terms of lowering your budget, because you don't need to, show all the gore and all that.
Exactly. Absolutely. That's the thing, is it's got this dual function.
Yeah.
And it's, again, like, that's brilliant. That makes so much sense from a screenwriting perspective. And I mean, somebody could dispute this and say, like, well, I'm not a screenwriter and I didn't like it. Then I'm like, that's fair enough. But I'm just saying that there's other reasons to appreciate it.
Yes.
So I just continuing on with characters, I want to talk briefly about Jason.
Yeah.
So, the stockbroker. Now, that was a really interesting turn because they're all lone survivors. And then we find out, but the rest of them, they just really, it was pure luck of how
Right.
they survived these harrowing experiences.
Yeah.
Because you've got Zoe who survives a plane crash. You've
Mhm.
got Ben who is driving drunk with his friends and he survives the crash. And it's like, well, he didn't do anything to survive and that caused his friends to be killed. He was just as likely to be killed as they were.
Mhm.
Um, you've got Amanda who's the war veteran. I'm assuming it's Iraq, but I don't know. Anyway, that uh, somewhere in the Middle East, from what we saw with the IED, the improvised explosive device, where she, and her friends, like her comrades in arms, like end up dying.
Yeah.
So, but she survives. She's wounded, but she survives. You've got Mike, who's the truck driver at this point, but he was a miner, and then is it his brother who dies or his?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were like, so you get the mine collapse and all of that. So that's luck. And then you said with Danny, then it was a carbon monoxide
Yeah.
accident.
There's I would have to rewatch it because I feel like they kind of said that that Danny killed his family, like accidentally killed them,
Oh, okay.
so that he somehow, caused the carbon monoxide poisoning. Um, but that, yeah, if he's a lone survivor, then it's like, well, he should have been in the house if you're talking about him being a survivor then, but it could just be that he wasn't in the house at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that one,
But
it's a little unclear, but it's I think intentionally so because he's not alive by the time that we get down
yeah,
there.
but we never really saw anything nefarious in him.
Yeah, yeah.
But then Jason is an outlier in this group of people. And I
Hmm.
don't know if the Minos group had a sense that he actually killed his friend. Because, like, for people who haven't seen the movie in a little bit, then just a reminder there was a boating accident and their sailboat, it flipped. And so it's upside down, and they're, just riding on like the hull of it, but it's, upside down in the water. And then they've only got one coat and it was really cold. And then he told the um, the people who rescued him that his friend just went crazy and attacked him and then swam off.
Hmm.
Um, but then we find out because he's willing to kill Mike in this escape room, he's willing to do whatever it takes to survive. He doesn't really care if people die along the way as long as he survives. It's like, oh, he's just this ruthless, selfish person who is kind of a sociopath. And then you find out that, like, oh, like, you killed your best friend, like, and I did what I had to do to survive, that whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any evidence one way or the other that the Minos group knew about this, but it's an interesting little wrinkle in the film
Yeah.
that that adds an extra dimension to the movie that I really like.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say that like all the characters, then they are so well written.
Yeah, they
Like it's
really
like
are.
surprisingly well written, where you
Yes.
totally get it. The Amanda being, this war veteran who, she didn't choose to be the sole survivor, but she
Right.
has to. She realizes, like you can sense that she has some guilt about being the
Yeah.
only one in her, uh,
Unit.
yeah, in her unit who survived, and so that's why she's okay, like sacrificing herself in order to save the others there. She's
Right.
like, I already got my second chance, or whatever. Like you can see something in there. Um, yeah, you totally get why Zoe is so, closed off.
Sure.
And yeah, and even Ben,
Mhm.
then he obviously feels awful about what he
Yeah.
did to all of his friends. And so he is constantly, in conflict with Jason.
Yeah.
where he's just like, no, we have to look out for each other. This is horrible that, other people are dying and that we're living.
Right.
That's survivor's guilt.
Mm.
And yeah, the film just does such a good job with, dealing with survivor's guilt in all of these instances. And
Yeah.
then having Jason be, he doesn't suffer from that because he caused his friend's death.
Right. And it makes so much sense that he's a stockbroker, right?
Right.
That
Yeah.
again, it's like, ooh, the rich. The rich
Yeah.
are so evil, right? And so even within this particular thing, because he's obviously very wealthy and he interacts with wealthy people, with all of his clients and all of that, but it's like the one person in this group who's wealthy is the evil sociopath.
Yeah,
It's like
absolutely.
it just makes so much sense of like, because of who they're already saying the villains are.
Mhm.
Um, Now, I'm not sure how I feel about this, but I do have a question. So we get introduced before we get into the escape room. Then we get introduced to Zoe, we get introduced to Ben, and we get introduced to Jason.
Mhm.
But we don't meet Amanda, Mike, or Danny until we're actually in the escape room itself at
Mhm.
the facility. And then, of course, the three people that we met before are the ones who last the longest, which is
Right.
completely unsurprising.
Yeah.
Um, do you think that that's a weakness? Because I'm like, if you introduced all six, then it does throw us off a little bit more because then we don't know who's going to survive.
Right. Yeah, I
But it could also be a little bit tedious going through six different, not backstories, but introductions outside of the escape room.
yeah. Yeah, I know, and I was thinking about that as well. I think that they did a really good job in choosing to only show the three, um, because uh, at least from my perspective while watching, I had serious doubts about Mike, uh, and
Yeah, that's
and about
fair.
the expert, Danny. Both of them, then I was like, because Mike seems far too nice for his own good. I'm like,
Agreed.
you might be, an undercover person. And then Danny as well. Then he's like, oh, you know so much about games. Like, you could be, recruited by them in order to design these things in the first place, or intentionally, throw a wrench into things. Yeah. So uh,
That's really well said because you're right. When I was watching it, then that is exactly what I was doing is because both Mike and Danny, they do not seem to be concerned for a
right.
while. Like
Yeah.
Danny isn't even concerned until he's already like dying
Yeah.
and he's in the water. He still wasn't really frightened by anything,
Yeah.
even when they almost froze to death. Like,
Yeah.
and yeah, and then Mike is certainly not like he seems so unconcerned for quite a while that
Yeah. Yeah.
it does make you think because if you've seen these other movies like if you've seen Saw then you're
Hmm.
thinking oh like is one of these a plant is
Right.
one of these part of the organization and like they set it up like maybe they're the only one but they like went to all the work of building this entire thing and they want that up close and personal view of people dying along
Yeah.
the way and not making it like I did think that
Hmm.
but then when it wasn't that at all then it's like oh it really was just as transparent as the three that we met before are going to last the longest and that's kind of why we were introduced to them to have
Yeah.
a little bit more connection to them.
Yeah. I will say that it's definitely a weakness, showing Zoe at the beginning, like featuring her so prominently, and
Right.
then trying to do, oh, hospital room, and it's just like, no, she didn't. I'm like, it would be really, really brave if you decided to do that, but there's no way that you're brave enough to do that.
I agree. I agree. um Now I guess like so we've kind of gone through all of the different characters. The other thing that I really like is that you've got the way the um, game designer, the architect, or whoever orchestrated all of this, all of the little, uh, I guess, objects of significance and rooms of significance that
Mm,
resonate with them, that it's very much like what Jigsaw does, of
yeah.
how it makes it a little bit more fair for them to be able to potentially escape, because they can use their life experiences to recognize certain objects or clues, and strategies to be able to get out, but also at the same time getting them to confront this thing that they're really scared of.
Yeah.
Because you've got Amanda, who, because she's been burned with the IED, she does not like the feeling of being in an incredibly hot room and maybe potentially, getting burned.
Hmm.
That makes sense. And then Jason, who was at sea and almost froze to death with hypothermia. Then you get him into the cold room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that I liked the way those things were introduced, and I thought it was fairly clever.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like even, with Danny, because he's so obsessed with escape rooms, then you just throw him into any of them and it's
Right.
automatically he has that. And with Ben, being intoxicated while he was driving, then his challenge is the intoxication room.
The
of,
intoxication room. But I think Danny, it's supposed to be when they're in the hospital room, and then there's the release of gas, that it's supposed to be the carbon monoxide, because if that's how his
oh
family
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
died,
yeah,
right?
that's a fair point.
That's
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's, I think, Danny's room. And
Right.
then I'm not sure about Mike.
Yeah.
Mike
Um,
or even Zoe.
yeah, I know. Zoe is the real odd one to me. I feel like she didn't really get a room at all. The upside down room, I guess, would be for Mike.
I guess so, that he like drank his problems away after losing his brother or something. I don't.
Yeah, I know. I honestly, I want a little more insight into Mike because that's that's the one that I'm like, eh.
I think he was the most poorly written character.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Uh, not even necessarily poorly written, but
Poorly
underwritten.
fleshed, yeah, underwritten, yeah, yeah. That's a much better way of putting it. You're right. Yeah,
Yeah. Um, but yeah, because I think it was him who said I don't like this room when
yeah,
they were in the upside down room. So
yeah. Oh, maybe it's because when you're in the mine, then the way it collapsed, everything feels upside down. I don't know.
yeah, I know you would think that it would be something more about like claustrophobia,
Yeah,
which then would it be the final room, fancy room?
yeah, because there is the fancy. Maybe that's supposed to be Zoe's room, even though that seems to have nothing to do with a plane crash. But
Right,
and that just seems like a room that she'd just excel in.
right, yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
But that's kind of like, it's both like it's one of those things of you, it's not so perfectly written from that sense, where it is just, it's everything, weaves together in this, complex way, but it all comes together perfectly and everything has significance. It's a
yeah,
little bit more like some of it has significance, and other stuff
yeah,
it's like, nah. Like, it's not like everybody gets a room and they have to think back to their own past of that traumatizing memory, and that will lead to the clue. It's
yeah,
not that complex. It's more just a little bit of, oh, we'll just give a little flair, a little touch of this and a
yeah,
little sprinkle of that. And it's like, oh, if that person, if it doesn't fit that well, then that's fine. It's still a good room.
yeah, and I do actually like that better than you know than in the Saw movies where he outright says, "This is what your choice is, and it's because of this in your life."
Yes.
That was, a bit too direct. In this, then I like that they just have to figure it out themselves.
I agree.
Um,
And I
yeah.
definitely feel that way about the Saw movies, which is one of the reasons why I stopped watching the rest of
Right.
them, is I'm just like, it is just, there's nothing subtle here. It
The
is
choice
just,
is yours.
yeah, it's just so overt. And I'm just like, that's why the first Saw makes so much more sense. And I think it's the best film. I mean,
Mhm.
I have not watched the other ones, to be fair. I've only watched two and a half because I got
Right.
partway through the third. I just quit.
Yeah.
But the first one, it is a mystery where they don't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
And the other ones, then it's like, this is exactly what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, all right. But yeah, no, man, I really did enjoy this film. I'm happy that there's going to be a sequel.
Yeah, me too.
Hopefully they can, uh, yeah, just tweak some things
Right.
to improve. But
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I wonder what they're going to do if they're going to have the same writers, or I feel like it could go in a lot of different directions. Right.
mhm.
There's so many movies that start out with this really surprising film where based off of an original screenplay and this original premise and fairly successful, and sometimes they just keep going and it's great, and other times like the quality is awful, and other times they just go in such a different direction
Right.
that good
Yeah.
or bad, it's just it doesn't capture what the original one does. Like I feel like that with Saw. Then I know a lot of people really enjoy the rest of the Saw movies, but they're so different from the first one
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
whether you love the first one or not, like that's fine. But it's not in even in the same spirit as the first one.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I've got one question for you, and then I feel like I've mostly said what I want to say with this movie. But um, okay, they all get the puzzle box at the beginning.
Mhm.
Do you think they maybe sent it out to like 10 people, but four of them were too dumb to even figure out how to open up the puzzle box, and they couldn't get the ticket to go to the invitation to go to the place? Because that's quite a gamble to have. Because like you see them all figure it out. Like some of them are better than others. Like Ben just throws it because he's
Right.
just frustrated.
Yeah. Well, yeah, part of me wonders about that. I hmm. I did wonder about that, and I feel like it could have been sent to additional people, and that they already had, ideas for different rooms for different people. As I had said, like
Uh-huh.
the rooms are kind of just plug and play, where it's like, okay, we're going to put this room in this space.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, in terms of, I I think that because when Ben throws it, then like it waits a second and then it pops up. So it seems very much like it was almost more on a timer than anything else.
Yeah, I know. I kind of think that too, that it's not even so much like I feel like it just would open anyway, that they would just have it set up of,
Yeah.
hey, if you can solve it, then it'll open. And if not, then it's like, fine, here's your invitation. Show up,
Right.
you dummy. You're gonna like die first.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because then everybody who's gambling on all of this, they're like that person's got terrible odds of winning. So you could win more if you bet on them because it's like that person couldn't even open up the puzzle box.
I mean, that would explain why Ben had the worst odds because he literally just threw the box.
Yeah, that's true.
They're
That
like,
is
oh, we have
true.
to give him a hint.
Did I guess I have a couple other questions if you don't mind.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so with Zoe, when she goes back with the police and then she sees the no way out, and then she's like, "It's not over," and the words start moving and she's tripping. Were you not confused by that?
Uh, not not too much. Yeah, I don't know that. Yeah, the way that it says, uh, that it was weird because it said no way out, and then her mind switched it around so that it said Wu Tan Yu,
Yeah,
and I'm like that seems like that would be the opposite of the way that that would work, or you know,
agreed.
I don't know. That was just yeah, it was a little bit like. It's
I
it's
just
a cool thing to have Wu Tan Yu be, uh, the anagram for No Way Out,
yeah.
but that it's just like I don't I don't think this works the way you want it to.
No, I don't think so. I don't like that scene at all. At least that part of the scene. I like the part where she goes back with the police
Hmm.
to go to the place, and I like the fact that it's all cleared out,
Yeah,
and so okay, the whatever. And I like the fact that it's like you realize like before that, oh, it's a big organization. It's not just one individual or a small group of people. It's a big, powerful organization. This is so much bigger than you could possibly realize. Um,
right.
all of that stuff I like. But then my issue is, I think they did it because they were worried that, because there's a lot of bad dialogue in this movie where they just say things directly. So
Mm.
that way, any audience members who are not following carefully along with the plot, like to make sure that everybody knows exactly what they're thinking. Do you know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
That like especially how the movie opens with Ben going green. Oh, there's a green book. Oh, hands of the clock over there, right? Like, why would
Yeah.
he say that stuff out loud? I mean, maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't, but it's really to make sure that audience members are following along.
Yeah.
But because of that, I think it was this fear that if you don't move the letters around, if she just says no way out, Wu Tan Yu, people won't know. Or even if she says it's an anagram, people won't know. So then they
Right.
got them to move around. But I'm like, did they drug her with something? Is she not out of the matrix? Is she still in there? Because we already had this psychedelic moment where they go
Yeah.
into that psychedelic room and they're tripping, and it's like, wait, did she actually escape, or is this a hallucination that she's with the police, that she's still somehow inside the escape room? And I was
Mhm.
just like so confused, and it's just because the letters started moving.
Right. Yeah.
But I think that was just to help out dumb audience members, and then I
Yeah.
think a more sophisticated audience member was so confused by this. So like
Yeah.
you did the opposite. You confused the smart people and then you just satisfied the dumb ones.
Right. Yep.
Maybe I'm
Uh,
just dumb. Maybe like it is my fault.
no, no. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. Okay, I do have a couple more comments. One is I like that Danny was taken out. Like that's really what happened. He didn't just, fail at a puzzle. They took him out. That he was just,
Yeah.
you know, standing there, and then all of a sudden he was gone.
Yeah.
And it's clearly because, he had sneaked in that that extra phone.
You think so?
I think so. I don't think that they were happy about that.
I don't think they were happy about it either, but I guess I just figured I don't know how orchestrated it was. I felt like he died fairly naturally, like it wasn't contrived on their part. It's just that he was so naive that he wasn't being careful about anything. He just
Mm,
figured, I can't fall through the ice. It'll make it seem like you can fall through the ice, but
mm,
that could kill me and they won't kill me. That he just didn't recognize that any of this stuff was actually dangerous because he spent his entire life playing video games, like all these simulations, video games and escape rooms.
mhm.
That because he's been in simulated dangerous environments for so long, he doesn't recognize real danger. And
Right.
that's what happened. But it could be your reading that they they wanted to take him out. I I think from a screenwriting perspective, you want to take him out as early as possible
Mhm.
because he's naive, but also because you want to make it harder on the
Right.
remaining characters.
Yeah. I guess because I just don't feel like I- it just comes so out of nowhere
It
of just the ice
Yeah,
exploding and he just falls like right in.
yeah, and he certainly had no chance of getting out because they had such a strong current. Like they were
Right.
moving the water so much that he couldn't even get back to the hole to
Yeah.
get back out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as like that entire room, it was like I felt like the rooms just got less and less realistic as we moved on. But that room, you know this, that I mean, anybody who's from the north knows this. If you had a block of ice that big and it's that cold in that room, and the idea that you put your hands on there, that it's going to melt it, that and they're all taking turns with that,
Yeah.
that would not work for so many reasons.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Of
I do. Yeah.
well, you would just get frostbite on your hands, and
Yeah.
then there wouldn't be any warmth from them, so it wouldn't work anymore. The solution was, beat that block of ice, not
Right. Yeah.
melt it with your hands.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I think that one was a bit of a I don't think that's how that works.
So, sometimes I feel like, I'm watching a movie, I'm like, you really did grow up in LA, didn't you? Do you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
that's not how snow works at all, or that's not how ice works at all.
Yeah.
It's fine. I can forgive it, but
Yeah.
since
At
we were
least Mike like held it against his body.
right,
That made way more sense. But
yeah, but yeah, the idea that they could just with their hands
yeah, I mean,
as
I don't know how long they were supposed to be there.
it was. a long time, and then it was showing the thermometer, and it was like getting to like, I forget what the temperature was, but it was really cold, and
Yeah.
it just kept dropping.
Yeah.
And and based off of how quickly it was dropping, it made it seem like, well, if it's dropping that quickly, that consistently, then they've only been in there for like 5 minutes. And if you're telling me that you can melt through like 6 inches of solid ice in like 5 minutes with your hand, then it's like maybe if you're on fire, but otherwise, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is what I mean, though. I'm saying, like, I'm not saying that it's a perfect movie, but I'm going, but
Right.
it's still so fun. I'm going, I don't
Yes.
care. Even if
Yeah.
that's the case, I don't care. I like this idea of, ooh, we have to melt the ice. Okay, fine.
Absolutely. All right. So I feel like, talking about the sequel and, potentially further sequels,
Yeah.
then I think even if they don't bring back Zoe for the next one, or Ben, then I
Mm.
think that they could do, after 3 or 4 films or whatever, then they have a set of survivors who are all going to be
Oh,
like
yeah.
previous winners who all
Like,
come back.
yeah, exactly. In what do they call that in the Hunger Games? Like the quarter quell or something
Oh,
like
yes.
that,
Yeah.
where you get previous winners from the games who all have to compete against each other. That would be
Yeah,
perfect. Like that would make a lot of sense.
absolutely.
Um, yeah, and they could do that with Zoe. You could bring her, and then you don't even have to do multiple movies. You could just the next one could be her and a bunch of other survivors.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so many. They could take this in so many different directions.
Yeah.
Um, I guess my fear is that because this was filmed, like the actual production budget was only $9 million, then and based off of what we've already been told within the film, that they always want more complex rooms and puzzles and more interesting characters,
Yeah.
that the budget's going to be a lot higher for the next one, and
Yeah.
probably not as good, and then less likely that it'll make back its money, so then we won't get multiple films, because I feel
Right.
like I'd rather see the budget stay small but do
Yes.
interesting things and keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. And also with the short production time, because you said that like because that the first one came out in 2019, and you said that the second one is supposed to come out later this year.
Yes.
So less than a year, um, or I guess you know less than 2 years at the very least, production time to get out this sequel. It's in
I
terms of
mean,
writing and all of that
it
is
did come out very, very early in 2019. I think it was like January.
okay.
It was one of those January releases, right?
Mm,
Where they've gone through the award season, and then those January movies that kind of don't really do very well. But
right.
I think it did fair. Well, it obviously did fairly well. But I think it was fairly surprising that it did as well as it did. Anyway, that I think it came out fairly early in the year, but it is going to come out in. Um, okay, it was supposed to, at least according to Wikipedia, it was originally scheduled for April 17th, 2020.
Oh my goodness.
It was later pushed back to August 14th, 2020, and then to December 30th, 2020.
Okay.
So at least, like, they've moved it several times and they keep pushing it, but I would always prefer to see them push it later if it's not working,
Right.
than
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
it's not working, let's just release it anyway.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. No,
don't do
absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
And it does say that it's going to be the same director, same screenwriter, at least one of them. Bragi, it's Bragi. I don't know how to pronounce Bragi,
No idea.
and then shoot sorry, Schut. But there was another screenwriter as well, but she's not attached, Maria Melnick.
Mm,
Anyway, but same screenwriter, same director. um, yeah.
yeah. But yeah, with such a short production time, then it just makes me nervous because I'm like, because you have to write the sequel, but
Uh-huh.
assuming that they didn't already have it written, that you have to write it,
It
And
says on February 25th, 2019, a sequel was announced as being in active development.
hmm,
So that is like not bad. If
yeah,
a full year ago,
yeah, that's
like that's
true.
almost 2 years.
Yeah. Okay.
I agree with you though that if it was more like 10 months or something, then it's
Yeah.
like this is going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
But
Because I
that's
mean, that's what happened to the Saw franchise. They were releasing one every single year.
yep, yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, so I think it's gonna be okay, but I really wonder what direction they're gonna go. And it looks like the actress who plays Zoe, at least according to Wikipedia, and I should do a little bit more research on that, but it doesn't look like she's attached right now.
Okay.
So, but that doesn't even mean that like I could very well see her coming back in like a third film.
Right. Yeah. Or even as a tease at the end of the
Yep,
second one.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm not sure if I had much more to say beyond that, other than just I was so even for me, I'm like, oh, this is right up my alley. I'm gonna like it. And sometimes I'll watch something like this, and even if it's bad, I'm like, I still enjoyed it. But I
Mhm.
watching this, and I continue to feel like I enjoy that a lot more than I thought I would.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah,
It's really, really good. And if you have watched this whole discussion and not seen the film,
go
I don't
watch
know
it.
why, but yeah, go watch it. It's
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's worth your time.
yeah, agreed.
Yeah. All right. Well, feel free to comment below on any of the stuff that we talked about and subscribe, all of that stuff. All right. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Ignore the bell, people. We're gonna keep going. We're still ignoring it. Don't worry. I, I don't know what that. I think that's the fire drill. All right. We're gonna go home. Yeah. All right. We're done.